This is Rob Tebbutt for ID Boxing. Delighted to be joined by Johnny Fisher, the Romford Bull. We're here in Earlsfield, of all places, but you've just come back from Las Vegas, Johnny. How was that?
Yeah, great, Rob. Good to see you, mate. But yeah, had a great time in Vegas. But we're back to reality now, down in South London, south of the river, in the old Earlsfield.
Yeah, it's quite the contrast going from the bright lights of Las Vegas to the rainy streets of South London. But you had yourself a good time over there. Obviously managed to squeeze in a little bit of boxing while you were there.
It's brilliant out there. A good few weeks of sparring, learning the Salas style as well, trying to implement things from that. Good sparring with Joe, obviously, and Carlos Takam. So some good world level rounds under my belt.
We've spoken in the past about the fact that you've been out there before, but it was a long time ago now. Certainly sort of worlds apart experience-wise for yourself. How was this trip to Vegas different to what the first time you went out there?
It was great to go back, and because obviously when I'm out there my first time as an amateur, I'm at university, everything's completely new to me. Still new to me now in some ways, but I'm not under pressure. I can sort of do my job, which is to spar Joe, relax a little bit. When I was out there for the first time, it's like you're a little bit tense because you're like with new people you don't really know. I know Joe well now, so we gelled really well and we got some very good work in.
Working with Ismael Salas, I was saying a minute ago, one of the greatest trainers in the history of the sport. I mean, he's worked with the who's who, particularly at heavyweight over the years. Felix Savon, obviously now Joe Joyce, and kind of all of the lightweight guys. What's it like working with a master like Ismael Salas?
Unbelievable. Well, the first day, a couple of days I got there and I started doing the boxing work, I thought, bloody hell, I can feel like I know I'm a newcomer to the professional game, but I felt like a complete beginner again. And the great thing about that was we sort of stripped everything down, and Salas teaches you not what to throw, but how to throw, the house of fundamentals. So working on the correct shots, the correct stance, the footwork, and that's something I can take back with me and Mark, and we can build on that. And it's great that Mark and Sonny Cannon and Jimmy Tibbs they've let me go out there and experience that, because it's just going to build me as a fighter.
Get you doing any salsa music? He likes a bit of salsa dancing out there, doesn't he, Salas?
It's a bit of Cuban music, but I've got two left feet, so I'll be in a bit of trouble. So I'll leave the dancing to someone else.
You mentioned there you train Mark Tibbs. Mark, kind of a spit and sawdust type character, very again sort of teaches the fundamentals, similar to Salas. How is it different working with Salas compared to working with Mark back here?
It's just it's more the environment as well. Being in America, in Vegas, it's just it's a bit more gritty in terms of. Everyone's there for a certain reason. You move to Vegas for your boxing, so everyone's there, they're on a mission. And obviously the wealth of knowledge that Salas has got, the experience he's got, was it 15 world champions I think he's got. So just a different style, like even the feet were different. Like me and Mark would stand slightly different, my hands would be a little bit lower on the chest so I can be a bit free. There's definitely things I like about the Salas style, but we're not going to try and change me to that style. It's just about taking one or two things from that, and then what Mark's really good at is not trying to change me too much. He knows what I am, and he's going to make me the best version of that, add things to that game. And that's the beauty of working with Mark. He'll mould me into the best version of me rather than change me into something that he wants me to be, if you understand what I'm saying.
I saw that your dad surprised you. I saw on social media that he just ended up walking through. Where was it, the Wynn that you were at the time?
Well, he loves the Wynn. If you know my dad, he loves the Wynn Hotel. He can't believe how nice it is there. And I spoke to Shane. He said, we're going to go and have a bit of food. We're going to meet a couple of nice ladies, have a bit of dinner. And then instead of getting a couple of nice ladies, Big John walks around the corner. So a pleasant surprise in some ways, but also a disappointment in others.
Let's talk about this fight that we're here to discuss today. Joe Joyce takes on Joseph-Parker live on BT Sport Box Office next Saturday. Really good fight. I mean, I think the general consensus is it's a pick-em fight, 50-50, 55-45. How do you see it playing out next week, and what do you see being the defining factors on the night?
Oh, it's a great fight. It's WBO number 2 and WBO number 3. A former world champion against someone who's been predicted by many to be a world champion soon. So, listen, as you said, it's the hardest fight for Joe Joyce to date. The skill level of Parker is going to be something that's going to test Joe. But the way Joe's been acting in the gym, the way I've seen him, because I've seen him since about 2019 now, and if I compare him to what he was like then, this is the best camp I've ever seen him. He's the best sparring partner, the best sparring we've had, the most competitive spars in terms of the intensity, the work rate, the movement, the head movement. It's just different little facets that he's added to his game, and that's the benefit of having back-to-back camps as well. So I'm really looking forward to it, but I think from what I've seen from Joe Joyce, it's going to take a very special man to beat him, and if Joe Parker does do it, fair play to him, because it's not going to be easy.
You mentioned there, I mean, the word, kind of the relentlessness of Joe Joyce, that, as he calls it, that juggernautness that he brings to the ring. What's it like when you're in there with him, even in sparring when you've got the big gloves and the head guard on? Try and sum up being across the ring from Joe Joyce?
Well, what I've learned, and I've had to learn it the hard way a lot of times from like the relentlessness of him just keep pushing you. If you just let Joe do what he wants, you're in for a very, very hard spar. And it's only sparring, but you're going to be in for a very relentless, you're going to be in for a beatdown. So the best bet you've got is to fight back and fight fire with fire. So that's why me and Joe have such exciting spars all the time, because I've got to give a bit to him, because otherwise he'll just keep coming and coming. You've got to throw him off his rhythm somehow. So it's been brilliant for the last 2-3 years for my development, because I'm used to that high intensity work now. But what I've noticed this camp with Joe is it's not just that relentlessness. It's not just about that anymore. He's cleverer, he's more intelligent, he's picking the jab a little bit more, and he's swaying side to side, and I can't predict what he's going to do all the time, which is great for me because that levels me up as well. But it's more than just being a juggernaut now. He's being very clever in how he does it as well.
You mentioned that there. It's a good point you mentioned about the jab. I mean, we've seen in some of Joe's fights, by his own admission, if he doesn't really respect what's coming back, he's just going to come straight at you and he's going to go through you. I think his biggest fight to date, Daniel Dubois, we saw that jab. We saw that amateur schooling, that pedigree. Do you think that's what we're going to see next Saturday?
I think so. I think he's got to judge that distance correctly. Obviously, being a much taller man, he's got to use his natural advantages. But when the time comes, he knows he's got to step on that gas and get that finish. And listen, Daniel Dubois is probably the hardest puncher he's fought. I don't think Joe Parker's going to have the power to upset Joe too much. But what he could do is outbox him for 12 rounds or try and outbox him. That's got to be his plan. I think that's the only way he's got a hope of winning the fight. So I know he's speaking about he's going to stop Joe Joyce. I highly doubt that. But the only bet that he has got is he's going to try and outbox him for 12 rounds. But when you've got a juggernaut, 6'6", 18, 19 stone man following you around the ring, not really regarding your power, it's going to be a very, very long night for Joe Parker, unfortunately for him.
Staying with the heavyweight division, we are dominated at the minute. But Tyson Fury, one day he's going to fight Anthony Joshua, then he's going to fight Usyk, then Joshua, then Usyk. Let's go for Joshua versus Fury. We've seen in the news today, by all accounts, Anthony Joshua has agreed terms to box Tyson Fury on December the 3rd. How do you see that fight going, if indeed we do see it?
Yeah, great fight, first and foremost in British boxing. Hopefully it's nearly done now, I'm hearing. So for me, Tyson Fury is the top of the pile at the minute for the heavyweights. That doesn't mean that Joshua can't land that punch or force a stoppage in some way, because he's got that combination. If he goes back to that 2017, 2018 style AJ, that combination, ferocious punching, he's got a very good chance. But for me, the quality of work, the size, the all-round ability means that Tyson Fury will do the job.
If I gave you my last pound to put on it, it's not your pound, so you don't have to worry about losing it. Who are you going to put the pound on, and what's the outcome going to be? Fury points, Joshua stoppage? How are you going to see that one?
For me, Tyson Fury, late stoppage. That would be my bet. But that's no disgrace to Joshua, because for me, it's still very close. Although in my head, Tyson Fury, stoppage, that's what I'm thinking. I can also see different outcomes of that. But for me, you've asked me to put a pound on it, it's Tyson Fury stoppage.
As it's my pound, if it comes in, I'm having a little cut of that. We mentioned Alexander Usyk there. That is, of course, I say the other fight. I mean, the undisputed fight at heavyweight. Tyson Fury versus Alexander Usyk. You backing Tyson Fury again in that one?
I think so. I think just listen, Usyk's a big, strong man. Everyone's saying he's a small heavyweight. Well, he's still a big 6'3", 16, 17 stone bloke. So he's still going to be strong. But I just think the awkwardness of Fury, I think we could see more of like a boxing performance in terms of just tying him up, laying on him, jab, 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 12 rounds. Even if you don't stop him, I think you'll beat him on points.
Okay, and just finally, we will leave this one to you. Of course, we are waiting to see you back in the ring. What have you got for us? What's the plans for the rest of 2022 for the Romford Bull Army?
We've got a couple of dates lined up. Hopefully this week we'll have an announcement. But it'll be a London show. We're looking forward to it. Get the Romford Bull Army out in full force, and there'll be plenty of bosses in the crowd, I'm sure.
So I'm sure there will. Johnny, always a pleasure to catch up with you. Thanks very much for speaking to ID Boxing. I think it's the first time that we've done this on ID Boxing. I'm sure it won't be the last.
Cheers, Rob. I really appreciate it, mate. Thanks a lot. Bosh.